Everybody has to take a pause. It can't be all-encompassing. You have to be a woman. You have to figure out what things light you up, joy, peace, and freedom. Remember, we pick people. The universe works for us, not against us, and we pick people for places that we're not free from.
Hey, Karen, it's good to see you.
Hey, good to see you, Amber.
Girl,
Thanks for having me.
Yes, ma'am. We have so much to talk about just because what you are doing professionally, but also how that lined up with what was going on in your life personally. But I just want to get into the meat of it because I know you're going to have so many nuggets for the listeners. And I really would just love to kick it off by just really telling us about your pause method. Why you created it and really how your pause method can really help divorced women navigate life after divorce.
Yeah, so the pause method actually just got put in place not too long ago, actually.
Love it.
I didn't even realize I was doing it all this time. And I'm like, okay, so let's put this, into a method so people could really understand it. It really is just like taking a pause from life. We are so busy as women doing for everybody else. And I always use the analogy of when you're on a plane, right? And the oxygen mask, put yours on first, selfishly, so we can take care of others better, right?
Yeah.
And that word selfish just has such a negative connotation to it, right? So I'm just but we can't really take care of others until we start taking care of ourselves so much. So to take a pause, really, to just kind of look at life on how you actually, think, feel, behave, attract, all that stuff. Obviously through some, coaching with someone, because it's really difficult to do through that actually method by yourself. And then just really break it down because we have so much uncertainty in ourselves, right? The way we live, and there's so many possibilities out there. But for me, I actually went through a whole transformation of my own self in 2010, where I had to really look about how I was playing life, right? And I trusted somebody to take a journey on with that. And so just to really go, okay, so let's see how I play life through different experimental kind of, applications. And then really go, wow, just bring an awareness to myself where I could say, okay, so let me take that back and see where that happened. When did I first feel that way? And it always took me back to being a little girl, right? So then I had to dive into that and go, okay, so now that I know where that comes from, right? Is that really truth? What is that? And so really just to go through the steps of unraveling that and then going, okay, so, but that's actually how I perceive life and that's how I attract people in my life and blah, 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 right? So let me just unravel that a little bit and find out what the absolute truth is for me now. And let's see life that way. And let's see how I can attract people from that truth, right? So what I realized, in more work over the last 14 years, right, and deciding just to kind of start my own coaching business and trying to impact as many women as possible to take the pause, was I literally was living in a world where I didn't matter as a small child. And because I played that out into my adult life, I ended up actually thinking that, feeling that, living that, attracting those people that would keep that true. So I could be right based on my perception of the world and the lens that I was looking through, right? So, and then once I kind of got that all entangled, I'm that's actually not truth. That's actually a lie that I'm telling myself. It's just words and stories that I put upon something from my childhood, and I don't really need to take that forward because it's not an absolute truth. My absolute truth is I'm a free being, and I can view the world however I want from a place that I do matter. And then I can attract different people. Because let me tell you, the men that I've attracted, because I don't matter, I'm always doing.
Yes. Yeah.
Attempting to get what I need to tell myself that I do matter, but it doesn't work. So interesting enough, I had somebody once tell me, why do you always do stuff for other people? Why are you not doing stuff for yourself? And I'm like, so taking that and unraveling that and going, you know what, that's right, because I'm always trying to prove myself that I matter out in the world, right? But when I know that that's not an absolute truth, and I can literally live from a place as a woman that I do matter, then I have the freedom to move forward in a world with not that heaviness, right? And attract the right people in my life. And it's interesting how when you open up that world, the universe just brings it all to you, as I know you've experienced in your own life. And every woman does at some point in their life. They get a glimpse of it, right? And then they're they revert back, right? Because we're so busy and we're so doing stuff for so many other people, right? And so that's my point, is if we can just pause for a little bit each day to kind of really go, what am I doing in life? and what are the things that I really want in life and the things that I really want to let go of, just to take that pause, you can really unravel that and stop living in this container, this imprisonment, right? Container of I don't matter.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think one of the reasons why I was so attracted to your pause method and really wanting to share this with the listeners is because, and I'm sure that you will agree with this, but my God, I think there's no better time in a woman's life to practice the pause method as if like after divorce. After divorce is the best time to practice that pause method and really just take a look at your life and figure out, what's working, what's not working. Maybe what are some of these patterns that keep showing up in my life? You know, this is why one of the huge things that I preach about constantly is like, God, yes, divorce sucks. And it can, I mean, for most women, some people are like, no, it didn't suck. I was glad to do it. Right. But for a lot of women, for myself, right, it was really, really traumatic for me. But I think one of the best lessons that I had ever, learned, and I really learned this, I think from an early age, my father taught me this, is just really always looking at these moments of adversity of like, okay, what's the lesson here, right? What's the lesson? How can I grow from this, even in the times of the most like excruciating pain? And so I know for me, I obviously didn't have the language to call it the pause method, but for me, it was after was even in the middle of my divorce, I was so desperate to figure out like what was the purpose in all this pain, because I just refused to believe that I was in this place for no reason at all. Like I'm a very spiritual person, and I just refused to give in to the fact that I was just here by chance. I really believe, and I still believe in my soul, that I went through my divorce for a divine purpose that is bigger than myself. And I know that had the divorce not happened, I wouldn't even be sitting with you here today. Right. And so one of the things you said a minute ago was really pausing each day for some reflection. What are some of your favorite ways to do that on a daily basis?
So, I didn't know. I wasn't doing anything in the beginning. I was just like getting kids up and like, doing my thing,
1,000%.
right? And just moving. And then by the end of the day, so when my kids are all now adults, right? So, and a couple of them are doing this. Some of them aren't, just because of where they are in life, right? And so, and I applaud them for being where they are and holding that space for themselves. But for me now, I wake up when I wake up. So I automatically wake up like at 7, and then I have a small dog, a little Cavapoo who I adore.
Oh, so cute.
And so I have my morning where I get up and I have my coffee, and like I literally take time to have my coffee and spend time with her, and I give her a little massage, which is like crazy, but she's loving it now. She just jumps up and give her a little massage, and it actually calms me down as well, right? And so then I actually always take time to do a little devotion for myself, and then I take time to read something, like 10 pages of some book that has something to do with what's going on in my life. So I read the 5 a.m. Club. Great book.
Oh, I read that. In fact, you know what?
By Robin Sharma.
Yeah, it's actually on my shelf somewhere, or maybe I just donated it. But yes, I have that one too. That's a great one.
I have that too. I have yet to be able to get up at 5 a.m., but I know I can if I really want to.
You can if you wanted.
But I mean, I do that, and I really take an hour for myself before I jump into anything, right? And so my day really starts about 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Right. And I work till 4, and then, and then I take that extra time where I never did that before. I had to learn how to do that for myself. Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. But Karen, the listeners are listening to this being like, okay, yeah, cool, Karen. You work for yourself and your kids are grown. This is how you can start work at 10 and end at 4. I don't have that luxury. I have to get up and get kids to school. I got to work all day in 9 to 5 and then come home, rinse and repeat. So what advice would you give that woman, though?
Yes, that woman.
Yes. So, how can she start to incorporate a little bit of pause in her day when she feels like she can't even go to the bathroom with the door closed?
So the pause looks many different ways. Some people take a pause by actually just locking themselves in the bathroom, right, for 10 minutes, right? And
don't
just
you
like
recommend
earplugs on, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah,
Some
and I was
people
going to
need
say, don't you recommend though doing that without your phone? Doing that like by yourself?
No phone.
Right, no phone. Okay, right.
Okay, so first of all, the first thing in the morning is actually the phone, right? Has so much stuff, and you're pouring that all into yourself. The news. The music you listen to, all that kind of stuff, right? It's all coming into you, right? So it's really hard because now your brain's just going. So what I would suggest is don't look at your phone right away, right? I don't look at my phone in the morning, okay? So I don't pick it up until like 9:30. is when I bring it up and I look at my day. But when you're young and you got kids to going, it's like the first thing you do is look at that phone, and it actually consumes you.
100%.
Like now you're looking about what's going on in the world, and oh my God, and oh my God, oh my God, and then you're not even present for your kids.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and then also, when I would take my kids to school, I would find a moment either in the car to listen to my favorite music. When I'm on the road, I put an amazing podcast on, something, because those are all little pauses for yourself. So when you think about yourself, right, just any pause. I mean, maybe it is taking a pause to go into the kitchen to make sure that you're preparing food so you can take care of your body during the day, which we don't do half the time.
That's actually a really important pause, because you're right. When my first company was in the health and wellness space, I could tell you like the number one reason why most women like struggled like with their weight and all of that is because they literally did not even carve like basic human needs, carve out enough time to actually eat lunch. And it was when I noticed that with women, is like, especially if they had some weight loss goals, when they just made the one change of literally just eating some lunch and actually carving out time, their body started to change. So yes, I mean, that's a huge one. That's like, we think, but it's like basic human needs that as a lot of women don't do.
Yeah, or taking the time to have, like, I know for myself, and I've learned this through the pause, through different methods, trying to figure out what works for me. I have my water with a straw. If there was a water bottle sitting here, I wouldn't even touch it.
Yeah. Oh my God. Same.
Right?
The straw is
like,
a game changer. That is true.
Right? I mean, just think, okay, what's really going to work for me, right? And in taking a moment to actually get up every hour, even if you have to set an alarm on your phone to go fill your water up.
Yeah.
Just that pause to go, let me take care of me, right? So then I can like continue for the next hour.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's like, for me, a pause that I started doing was walking to the mailbox.
Yeah.
As
Just to even
slow
get
as
outside.
possible.
Yes. That's a great one, because I know for me, like, I'm so pissed right now because I'm in Atlanta and it's the most beautiful weather right now. And my kids come home from school, like, have you been out? Like, the weather's so good today, Mom. I was like, I don't know. Yeah, I've been inside all day long on calls and this and that. And so that's a pause that I need to be more mindful of, literally just taking a minute to walk outside, take a breath of fresh air, check the mail, and then come back. Yes.
Yeah, it's the
1000%.
smallest little things. You know what I mean? Like maybe you have a garden, right? Like that's a pause for a lot of people, whatever it is, right? And you just want to go out and just pick some of the, what are the dead flowers off some of your stuff right now.
Yeah.
I mean, my stuff's coming back now, so that's something that I learned. I hated gardening. I'm like, what? I don't want to go out there and deal with the dirt and stuff. But like, just to go out there and just like, now it's good therapy for me.
Yeah.
Just to get some vitamin D, right? Now, go outside and just take a 10-minute just to close your eyes in the sun.
Yeah.
Right? We all have 10 minutes.
Yeah.
We just don't think we do.
No, absolutely.
But like you made a comment about women with the weight, they want to release some weight. And I always say I don't want to lose weight because that's a kind of a negative lose, right?
Sure.
I always say let's release the weight, right?
Yep.
But I mean, when you think about that, people are like struggling with the weight thing, right? And if you really actually look at it deeply, it's like, it's more than just eating the right food. It's more than just meal prepping. It's really about, I know when I was heavier, I wanted to protect myself because of things that happened to me as a child that I wasn't free from, right? So I didn't have to be attractive to attract men so I could get hurt again. So like you really have to think about like, it's more than just eating the right foods. It's like what's causing us to like keep the weight on, right? Like where are we not free? Like sometimes it's just because we want to protect ourselves or there's something in there, right? And as soon as you free yourself from it, right? But then you got to do the work. Take a pause and do the work.
Because I think that's really important because you can look at that through a few different lenses. And I like that you brought that up because for you, there was a deeper, obviously some subconscious programming that you needed to like make yourself unattractive to not attractive the man. But even for the woman who maybe doesn't self-identify with that, I think even looking at, so I think some other possible reasons as to why you're struggling, this really is true for anything, like why you're struggling to achieve whatever goal. But even if we're looking at the releasing the weight, right, as far as like trying for weight loss, right, it is at this stage, I think most of us know what are the foods that are going to move the needle for, like, what are the things we need to do in our life that's going to help us to achieve our goals? And then what are the things that are not? And I think that if you find yourself, I think everybody kind of knows, right? Obviously all the sugar and processed foods and all that, that's not going to help your goal, right? But I think that, if you were to take a pause, if you are somebody who's listening to this and is maybe struggling with that right now, and you find that you continue to like self-sabotage, right? Maybe you eat well all day long and at the end of the night, you find yourself, face first into the pantry or whatever, eating all the things. Well, pause and take a look at that and like take it a step deeper, which is like, okay, why did that happen? Well, it happened because I didn't really eat very much throughout the day, or I skipped lunch or whatever that looks like. But then not stopping there. Well, why did you skip lunch? Well, because I was busy working. Yeah. Yes, but where have you told yourself that your work takes priority over your basic human needs of like literally eating lunch? And then, right. And then going even a step further, where does that even come from? Right. I mean, so like playing that out, I think can be super helpful.
Well, and I think the question also is, women with kids. I mean, we're talking to a lot of, divorced women of all different looks and likes, but women with kids, especially if I was to play it back and ask somebody that I'm working with, it's like, okay, so you're not doing that for yourself, but you take a moment out to make sure that your kid has lunch for school.
Right.
So why are you taking care of your kid, however, not taking care of yourself?
What's the payoff?
Yes.
Right. I mean, and I talk about this a lot on the show. I know for me for years, and I grew very resentful for a very long time about this, but I self-identified and created this facade for myself that I was like the supermom, and I was doing everything for everybody all the time. And it was the thing I bitched about the most. And it was the thing that made me angry and resentful and all the things. But what I really realized when I did the pause and I took a look, what I realized is that the payoff for me is that somewhere in all of that, doing everything for everybody all the time helped me to feel needed. And I think a lot of moms have that too. It's what made me feel needed. And then if I feel needed, then that's what makes me feel valued. And that's where I get my self-worth from. And that was a lie I told myself for a very long time until I took a beat and realized.
Because I would have asked, back then, obviously you knew it was a lie. It's not your truth. So you don't need to live from there anymore, correct? Because you're free from that. But at the time, it's like, well, if I was to look back at you as a little girl, I would say, well, what happened? When do you remember the first time that you didn't get your needs met? Like, where did that message come from, right?
Right. Yeah, and I'm like, I don't even know. I think for me too, and if I'm just thinking like, about that, and I think for me, and this is what I run into, and I'm curious how you help your clients through this though. Like, I can't even recall that, right? So what are some like techniques or some things that you do with your clients to help them recall some of those childhood memories? Because there are some definite ones that were like defining moments in my subconscious that I like that about regarding like the way I feel about my body and things like that I can recall. But like when you asked me that question right there, I'm like, I have no idea. Like, I don't remember, like, I don't know that I have a thought or like the story for myself when growing up. I don't know that I walked away into adulthood thinking I didn't have my needs met, but obviously,
subconsciously, but you wouldn't.
Sure.
You wouldn't, right? Because it's in your subconscious.
Yeah. So how do you start
deeply buried, right?
Yeah.
That we actually have to have through you talking and whatnot, I would have been able to like bring that up and go, okay, so you dig deeper, right? You ask the questions and say, okay, well, when do you just think about it for a moment? Because, as a small child, tell me about your mom and dad, right? And then you would tell me about, just whatever you want to tell me about. And then I'd be able to identify, right? Like, so how did that feel like as a small child to not have your needs met? To always having to manipulate to try to get your needs met so you knew that you were safe, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you would come up, you would bring something up. And I'm like, so then what happens is we actually go out in the world with those thoughts and those feelings, right? And then we behave in such a way where we're always getting our needs met. We're always looking to get our needs met, right? But it's not actually really taking care of the internal feeling, because you're always, like I said, that one man in my life said, why are you always doing for everybody else? And do you ever do anything for yourself? And I was like, had to really think about that. I said yes.
You're like,
but really I was masking it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, wow, because when I really looked at it, like, I don't even know what I do for myself because I'm so busy doing for everybody else all the time, so I can make sure that I feel that I matter.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just this constant, and it's exhausting to actually live life that way, right?
Yeah.
So like if somebody was to come to me and go, oh, I don't want to take up too much of your time, and my first question would be, well, where in your life have you been an inconvenience?
Yeah, I mean.
And then that would unravel itself. And then what happens is, because that's the truth in the container that they live in, right? Then they're always like trying not to be an inconvenience.
Yeah. If somebody was going to sit and journal and wanted to, kind of start to tap into some of this on their own, I'm just curious, maybe if there was an area in their life that they were feeling stuck, that they were wanting to make some change in their life, but they just keep hitting roadblock after roadblock. Maybe it's they're coming out of divorce and they don't want to repeat the same patterns and attracting their next person, or maybe they are feeling depleted, like they're doing for everybody else, or in that people-pleasing energy. There's something in their life that they know they want to shift. shift. What are maybe 1 or 2 journal prompts that you would recommend that they start with just to start bringing some awareness around this?
Well, first of all, anything that triggers you or that upsets you is a good place to start.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. It's like
Right?
a dead giveaway. Yeah.
It's a dead giveaway. So
Yeah.
those are the things that I would start to go, wow, like, instead of just getting upset or something, it's like, okay, let me think about that, right? And let me like break that down and figure out, why am I getting upset? So
Can we use the example? Sorry, I'm going to interject, but can we
Yes.
use the example of your ex triggering you? Because so many women, like I want to use this example of trying to co-parent, right? And your ex like triggering you, right? And every time, you're really struggling to have like a co-parenting situation because your ex is super triggering you and really pissing you off. Like can we use that example to give some real time?
yeah.
Yeah.
I got to go back because it's
Yeah.
been a while. It's been like 26 years. So I wasn't married very long. So if my lie to myself is I don't matter, or let's just take a different one. So one of them was I'm not lovable, right? So when I was younger, I had, not seen, well, as with small children, we always want to be seen, heard, loved, and know that we matter. And so what happens in order to heal yourself, right, into the adult life, you're always seeking that. So I would do things for people, right? I'm like all the time. I was like, wanted to be that person, right, to attract that right to attract the right man. So I ended up attracting men that weren't available to me because my context was I didn't matter. So no matter what I did, that was the lens that I saw the world. I didn't matter.
Subconsciously, this was not a conscious
matter,
thought that you had,
right? That
Right.
I just didn't matter. So anytime any kind of conflict would come up or something that I wanted that I didn't get or something, it would just create this hostile environment. And so, and actually looking back, I had to look back at all my relationships, and I've been married twice, and both marriages were unfaithful. So I didn't matter. I picked men, I attracted men that were going to be unfaithful. And they had in the past, and I didn't know that. And of course, they lied and blah, 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 blah. But so most of the stuff that I was just constantly exhausting, trying to matter. And it just, so you pick people that you're just not healed from. It's the view that you're in. That's who you pick. Right? And either you grow and you level up because that other person's doing the work as well, or you don't. You just deplete, right? So, but what would we fight about? I don't know. It was very early in my marriage that I found that he was cheating. So, I don't even know that we were fighting about anything. I was doing everything. He would come home from traveling, and I would just make everything perfect, including taking on his 3 kids and making just life perfect, right? And so I don't know that we were fighting about anything. It's just that I just always felt like I didn't matter.
Yeah, well, for the woman also, I think maybe an example, not even necessarily from your life, but if you're giving advice to a client who came to you, let's say, and said, hey, I'm really having a hard time creating boundaries with my ex. They're really, I'm being, really triggered by the communication between us. I'm curious, what advice would you give her for how to maybe even maybe journal on it or think on it as far as trying to dig deep as to why she's struggling to create boundaries and maybe why is she being triggered? Because this is a common scenario, right? Women who are leaving divorce, they find themselves, even if their divorce was not a high conflict divorce, they are finding themselves in a situation where, it seems like every conversation with their ex is super triggering. And ultimately, you and I know as the coach and because we've navigated a lot of this work, a lot of what that boils down to often is that you're struggling to create boundaries with your ex. And so I'm curious, what advice, would you give her if she wanted to start kind of investigating why she keeps doing that? Why is she struggling with boundaries?
I think I would actually ask her first, where in your own life or with yourself do you not have boundaries with yourself?
Like what? What would be some examples of no boundaries with herself?
Okay, so you have to give me an example of what's happening. So, what's the story?
Yeah. This is just a woman who's recently divorced and she's got, 2 kids and she's trying to co-parent. And just anytime it comes to any sort of conversations about the kids and maybe activities or even the financial stuff, whatever. They
holidays and all that good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. They are just struggling to, exactly.
So first of all, I would take a look at what's really important to her, and what's going to be the best for the children.
Yeah.
And if you come from a place of co-parenting, that what's best for the children versus what's best for us.
Well, yeah,
right?
that's first and foremost, for sure.
Yeah. So because I was a divorce mediator for 9 years in my past life, and most of the things that people fight about is about themselves, the two of them. And I would just tell them when they come into mediation, it's like, can you bring pictures of your kids? And then when this happened, usually it's about them fighting about just crazy stuff in their marriage or how they view the world, and they just want to be right.
Yeah.
So most people just want to be right.
Yeah.
Right. And so what they do is they bring their view of the world and they bring it forward. And we all have history, right? So we're only bringing the history of our world. And it's never the same because we're unique people. We're one person in this big, big world, right? So there's no way that we're going to actually come together and think the same. There's no way.
Yeah.
If people can really put their stuff aside regardless and really think about what's best for the kids and how can we co-parent together as for the children, right, then their stuff just lays to the side, right? And sometimes I would bring the kids, into it too, and let's see their perspective too, because they have a different perspective of what they want depending on how old they are. I know that in my own family, my son's married, and his wife and him parent very differently, very, very differently. And he has a stepdaughter, and then now he has a 1-year-old son. And that's one of their bones all the time. And so I'm always helping them. I'm like, and he's always saying, let's just get my mom in the room so she can help us kind of navigate this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I always say, it's like, what's really important to you in raising a child and what's really important to you in raising a child through the developmental years. And we really need to think about what's best for them, not bring our old stuff to the surface and keep fighting about this. Can we just take one small thing and just dissect that a little bit?
Yeah.
And dissolve our view of everything of having to be right about something, right? Just dissolve that.
Yeah.
And really come together as co-parenting to find a plan that's really going to work for our children and for our new lives that we're actually in.
Yeah.
Right. So what happened with my son and his wife, it's like the child was in daycare for so long, and that person was another person parenting and bringing all this into this child's life. Nothing like how they would have raised.
Right.
So now we have a third person coming into the picture, right? And this person's coddling and she's doing all this stuff, and I'm like, and I actually experienced it. The child's like in grammar school, and this person's coddling like she's like 2 years old, and I'm like, she doesn't even get the opportunity to figure out how to soothe herself. So now we have somebody who doesn't know how to soothe themselves, frustrating over here because he wasn't raised that way. She's from a totally different, world. So now it's like, okay, so let's think about what's the best thing to do. Well, the best thing to do is to remove the child from that environment. Mm. So now we all had to get on the same page of let's remove the child from the environment. That's step one. It's kind of like someone who is an alcoholic and wants to stop. Well, you have to put them in rehab first, right? To actually remove the alcohol that's in their body. Now the real work happens outside of the rehab place, right? So now the child's in a different place that's more in line with how they want to parent, and there's still things that come forward, but they just keep talking about it. Because the deal is that if, I always say that, there's 3 R's. If you have resistance, it's because you're not communicating, right? But if you don't communicate and fix those things, it turns into resentment. Once you get to the resentment, it's really, really hard because it can turn into revenge. But if you get into resentment, you really have to go back. You have to really, really communicate. And I would suggest getting somebody to help you do that, right? Because once you get to the revenge, then you're out the door.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think for sure, and this is just kind of a sidebar, we kind of as far as co-parenting, yes, I definitely think always just remembering to put the kids' needs, set your stuff aside, and the communication is key. And kind of going back to what you had as far as asking the question about if you are struggling, if you're somebody who's listening to this and you're struggling to create boundaries with your ex and you're constantly being triggered, you guys are constantly fighting. Obviously, yes, like we said, communication is key. But I love the question that you said of first look at where else are you not setting boundaries in your own life? And I think an example that came up for me, what I was thinking about is like, where else in your life are you like maybe struggling to tell people no, right?
Oh.
Like where else? And is this like a pattern? Is this something to where maybe the reason why you're fighting with your ex is because you are struggling to create those boundaries? You're struggling to say no to things. And is this something that you see in other areas of your life, right? And this is where I think the pause method right there is a perfect opportunity to take a look at that and say, okay, you know what? This isn't just, yes, my ex is pissing me off and pressing my buttons, but ultimately, this is something that actually happens in other areas of my life that I need to pay attention to.
Yes. And the reason why your ex is pissing you off and triggering you is because those are areas about your own self that you haven't healed from. So remember, we pick people. The universe like works for us, not against us, and we pick people for places that we're not free from. So if your ex is pissing you off, then that's saying, okay, so I need to look at that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why in the world am I getting so triggered by this?
Yeah.
Right? Because really, if you don't have a reaction to somebody else, right? If someone came to my door and started yelling at me, I'd be like, okay, so something's going on with that person. Why are they yelling at me?
Yeah.
But if I had a father that was yelling at me all the time and I like can't handle people yelling at me or whatever it's going to be because I haven't like dealt with that, I might go get F you, get out. What do you know what I mean? I would just react in a totally different way.
Yeah.
But if I was really free from that and I'm like, okay, so yes, I had a father who did that, but I'm not in my parents' house anymore. And my parents are a small little piece of what's available to me, right? I might be able to let that go and go, this person just has some stuff going on. They actually, and could have came to the wrong house.
Yeah.
It's not even me that they're upset about, right?
Yeah.
So then I can just go, oh, wow, you know, they're having a hard day. And maybe my reaction was, is there anything I can help you with? I'm not sure what this is about. Versus like, how dare you, you know.
Yeah.
They react a totally different way. And so that's literally what happens.
Yeah.
So like my ex triggered me because he was unfaithful very right out of the gate. Like seriously, right out of the gate, which triggered me because of some past stuff from my childhood, right? So I never thought that would ever happen to me.
Yeah.
And of course then it happened to me. And then I'm like, I don't know how to deal with this, right? And so I was just all discombobulated. One of the things I did for myself after my divorce was I took a pause and said, what do I need in my environment and my surroundings to remind me that I'm a feminine woman, right? And I can still live in that feminine and be a great parent and not let that unfaithfulness take anything away from me. So I went out and I always tell people, like, when you get divorced, let's go out and buy something.
Yeah. Yes.
To celebrate the new life, right? Like, let's go and buy something, right? So I went out and bought myself a pencil drawing of a naked woman just laying on her bed, right? And I put it in my bedroom where nobody would see it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just reminded me every day that I'm a feminine woman, and yes, I can be in a relationship and I can have intimacy with a man, and I just somehow attracted the wrong person because there were places I wasn't healed. And so then I went and did my healing work.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things too, this idea of like attracting, because this is something for me that I have like a question that I have asked myself over and over again since my divorce is just like, you know, did I attract that person? And obviously, yes, right? I did on a degree attract that person, but I think it's hard for the human brain to get, especially if you've been through something like traumatic coming out of a divorce. It's really hard to wrap your head around like, okay, but like I didn't like I didn't want to attract that, right? Like it wasn't like a conscious act that I attracted that. And somebody said something to me at one point that really started to help me to like get my head around like this idea of how we can attract like the negative things in our life that we don't consciously want, but we are attracting them.
Yeah.
And they had said, and what reminded me of is when you said like, if I had a father that yelled at me all the time, it's no surprise that if somebody's got a father that yells at them all the time, they may actually find themselves in relationships where even though consciously that's not what they want, and it can end up being like their biggest source of frustration, but they end up attracting maybe a man that yells all the time or whatever that looks like, because that is what you are used to navigating. You grew up learning how to deal with that. And so like that can be a huge reason why you're attracting is because even subconsciously, even though that's not what you want consciously, your subconscious knows how to deal with that.
Well,
and
it's tolerance. as women.
Tolerance. Yes. Yeah.
We just know how to tolerate. Okay, so
Yeah.
having a baby, men can't tolerate that. There is
Right.
no way. They don't even know. And so we go through all these things, and so we tell ourselves that we can tolerate anything.
Yeah.
But like if you go back to like, if I ask somebody, and someone said that their dad yelled and screamed and hollered with them and is never available, right, to them, like I would say, okay, so what did that say about you? Like what did you take from that, right? That I was bad.
Yeah.
So then what happens when you go out in the world, right? If you're taking that forward, right? Not that you're going to attract that person, but you'll attract places that you're not healed from, right?
Right.
So then basically you go out into the world thinking that you're bad. And
Yeah.
so they're always trying to prove that you're good, but then things keep happening that telling you that you're bad. And so you would attract that person, right? Because that's your framework. That's where you're coming from. That's the container in which you live.
Right.
And so typically you only attract the person that you're not healed, that you haven't healed that part of yourself. You just will keep same old pattern, attracting the same person. I did the same thing. I was
Yeah.
married twice, attracted the same type of person.
Yeah.
Right? Then I got
Yeah.
scared and I'm like, I'm not going to date ever again because I don't ever want to make that mistake again.
Right.
Right?
Well, because it's just like I said, it's some of these things that we're talking about, they are very hard for our conscious brain to kind of wrap our head around, right? I mean, it's difficult to understand and accept, especially if you've gone through something like infidelity. It's very hard, I think, for our ego to even accept that I have brought this on myself. Like, what do you mean I've brought this on myself? I had no idea he was a cheater. Like, it's not like if I would have known that, I would have entered in the marriage. And I think that's what can feel about this work. I think that's what can feel so maddening.
Well, yes, absolutely. Because I didn't think that. I was just like, what? I'm wonderful. Like, why would anybody do that to me? Right?
Yeah, right?
Right?
Yes, yeah.
But if I had the context that I don't matter and I'm not loved, then of course I'm going to attract that. Because
Right.
I'm walking around with that. I'm not
Right.
available to matter to someone.
Right. And then again, this is on a subconscious level.
Very
This is not
subconscious.
a conscious
Yeah.
thought that you're walking
No.
around
No.
with. It's just like, and this is why the pausing and really digging into that and taking a minute to dive deeper is why it's so damn important.
Yeah, because I would say to, when I did my work, right, I just realized that that was a complete lie. Like that
Yeah.
was a lie in the form of words that I put stories to subconsciously, right? I brought the words forward, right? And I went out in the world and that's how I lived. But someone made me realize that that was a lie, right? Is it an absolute truth? I don't matter.
I'm curious in looking back though for you, like particularly in that relationship, now that you look back and you can say like through the lens of like, okay, I was walking around with this programming that I didn't matter. What were some of the things in the relationship, even before you found out about the cheating, what were some of the things in the relationship maybe that you tolerated or that you didn't demand or expect out of the relationship that would have been right in line with somebody who walked around with that subconscious programming of I don't matter?
Well, I can tell you because the first time he said he was going to get an apartment on the East Coast, we were on the West Coast. I was
Yeah.
like, please don't do that. That was like a trigger, like, please don't do that because now
Yeah.
you have an apartment all to yourself. Like, I just knew. I was just like, that. And he did it anyway.
So and that's a great example, right?
Right.
Of not listening to your
A
intuition.
boundary, not listening
Right.
to,
Not
because I don't matter, right? I'm
Hun-
walking around with I don't matter, even though I'm attempting to put some boundaries around something, which was your question earlier, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm attempting to put boundaries around it, but like if my subconscious tells me I don't matter, then my words don't matter. They don't matter to me. They're definitely not
Right.
going to matter to someone else.
Right.
I'm
No,
just saying stuff, right?
yes. Yeah, I
that
can
make
totally,
sense?
yeah, and I can totally identify with that because there were times in my marriage where things came up and conversations were had where I knew in my gut that what I was speaking was truth, but it was, turned back around on me and I accepted it. And looking back, how many times I accepted things that I knew in my gut. And then I started questioning myself. And then that goes back to this, belief of like, what is that belief that I'm bringing through
Well,
from
you actually
childhood?
said it earlier. My
Yeah.
needs don't matter.
Yeah, my needs don't matter. That's exactly right. And in fact, I walked away from the marriage thinking that was what I was was like, that was like really when I came to that realization of feeling like it doesn't matter how I feel. He's going to do what he wants to do whenever he wants to do it. And it does not matter how I feel. It does not matter. And for years, I look back and I'm like, holy shit, you tolerated that. You would express how you feel. He would turn it around on you. It didn't matter. Like your feelings didn't really matter. And then I got to the point where I was, oh my God, this is how this is with this person. And I am no longer going to take this. My feelings do freaking matter.
So you asked, the question is it an absolute truth that, is it true that you don't matter?
Yeah, no, that's not true.
It's not true. So if it's not true, then what is it?
What is it? Well, the truth is I do matter.
No, if it's not true, if it's
a lie. Is that what
it's a lie?
It's a lie.
It's a lie, right? It's a lie.
Yeah,
it's
a
just
lie.
words and it's a lie.
Yeah.
So how does it feel walking around as a woman, always trying to matter?
Yeah, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. Yeah.
Tiring.
It's tiring.
Oh my God.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, all those things, right?
Yeah, and I know for me, that was what I walked away. I'm 46, and I walked away from that marriage, and I said, never again, never again. Number one, will I ignore my intuition, because I felt that my intuition and really was my authentic self trying to speak my truth. And because I was still stuck in that subconscious programming of that my needs didn't matter, then I allowed somebody else to make me question myself, to then squash that intuition. And now for me, look, where I'm at now, I'm like, never again. If I'm feeling something, that is what I'm rolling with. Now, I'm not saying I'm completely inflexible.
No, but you've done the work.
I've done the work,
so
and I know.
That's great that you see it, right? And and then so you would ask the question, right? The next question would be, okay, so if that's not true, right? What would it feel like to walk around knowing you mattered?
Yeah, it would feel really damn good, right? I mean, for sure. But I think too, the key here, what I had to learn is I had to matter to myself before I could expect to matter with anybody else. And so for me, I even look back in my marriage and this energy that I was giving off, that I didn't matter because I was always self-sacrificing, I was showing to my partner by my own actions that my needs didn't fucking matter.
Yes.
I was doing it to myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so now you have children, right?
Right.
How old are they?
13 and 11.
Girls, boys?
I have a girl and a boy, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. And so now that you've done the work, right? We're not like passing it down to the next generation. How is it different now with your children?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very, very vocal about that. When mom needs time for herself, and that I'm always talking about, having that balance. My kids are very aware that if I maybe make time to go on a girls' trip, or if I take a walk or whatever, I'm very vocal about and trying to show that balance. That yes, you can still be a fantastic mother, and you can still be, a partner in a relationship, and also still take care of your damn self. And I know for me, part of what I found in doing my work around the ending of my marriage was that I knew that part of the purpose and the pain was absolutely breaking that generational trauma, because my parents were divorced. My mom had 7 kids. My mom was the epitome of expressing and showing for me that her needs didn't matter, because her whole life was her kids. And so I think I grew up with this belief. Also, when you're one of 7 kids and you're the oldest kids, you don't have parents that show up at the sporting events. You learn to be very self-sufficient at a very young age.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because my mom was busy taking care of everybody else, right? And so I knew that when I got divorced, I was like, man, this shit stops here. My daughter is not going to grow up believing that her needs don't matter, and that she is going to self-sacrifice for her kids, for her relationship, all of that. And I think that was one of like the things that I took out of that was one of the lessons for me that I had to learn. And that if I really wanted to be with a partner who was going to value me and show me that my needs matter, well, I first needed to start with myself and demonstrate to my partner,
Absolutely,
I do matter. Yeah,
Love
right?
it. Well, because you know what women do, we're so like all about the whatever it is, and we're so 110% in, and we think about ourselves last.
Yeah, 1,000%.
And then, like for myself, once my kids got older and kids were like, well, what's your hobby? And I'm like, I don't know, because I'm taking care of kids all this time. I'm taking care of everybody else. I don't even know. So I actually moved to North Carolina to get a little, just to get to my second home. And I stayed here. Literally, I'm like, I got to figure this out because I don't have a life away from my kids. Right.
Yeah.
So it was crazy.
Yeah.
So that was a huge pause for me, a 3.5 month pause.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Before
Absolutely.
I just, went into my own business. So, but everybody has to take a pause. It can't be all encompassing. You have to be a woman. You have to figure out what things light you up, joy, peace, and freedom. Right.
Yeah.
So that's such a great place to be once you get there. Right.
Yes.
So we just have to take the pause. It's little tiny pauses, right? Like I said, a walk to the mailbox, a moment to go into the kitchen and actually really think about what's going to keep me going for the next 2 hours, right?
Yes.
I will say one of the best movies that one of my mentors asked me to watch was called Finding Joe.
Ah.
It's on Prime TV. It's not on Netflix. It's
Yeah.
the best one, all about ourselves basically and how we go out into the world and what we do. And I don't want to give it away, but
I'm going to watch this. It's going
you got to
on my
watch
list.
Finding
Joe on Prime.
Finding Joe on Prime.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, you got to watch that. And then I watched The Matrix first, and then I went and watched that. I would do it opposite. I would do Finding Joe first, and then watch The Matrix again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to do that and report
It's just
back.
great to watch because you really get to see. There's a scene in The Matrix. Have you seen The Matrix before?
Yeah, but it's been forever.
There's a scene in The Matrix of a little girl that bends a spoon, and she tells to Neo, the guy, in it, you got to look past the spoon in order to bend it, because the spoon to us is metal, doesn't bend. It's whatever
Sure.
it's used for. But as soon as he could look past, right, then all of a sudden he could bend the spoon. So it's like a key scene in the movie.
Oh, okay.
Right? So
Yeah.
when you have kids, a lot of people with toys everywhere,
Sure.
right? And you want to get from point A to point B, right? The distraction is actually the toys that you have to navigate through because they're not picked up, right?
Right.
If you didn't have to navigate the way that we see life that's holding us back, that's keeping us stuck, and you could just get point A to point B, life would be so much free.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Look beyond the toys. Ooh, I love that, Karen. Girl, I knew that we were going to be talking about some shit today, and I love it. So thank you so much for being here. Where can the listeners find you, find out more about your coaching, how you help women?
Yeah, so they can find me literally the easiest way to find me is at Karen Bartholomew on Instagram. My
Perfect.
stand store is in there. It talks about there's some freebies in there. There's a journal freebie. I'm having a women's retreat the last week in June. They can see that in there. And they can get a clarity call with me for like 10 to 15 minutes to see if my coaching works for them, or
Perfect.
even like just give me a call. I'm so inspired and motivated to help women to get unstuck no matter what time of life they are. I mean, my own daughter is 20, almost 25, and she's doing this work now. And I'm like, listen, I'm 63. And if I had this work when I was her age, and I told her this the other day, don't wait for decades
Yes.
to start this work.
Girl, start it now. 1,000%. Yes, yes, yes. Well, Karen, I so appreciate you. I, of course, will have all of that in the show notes. And thank you for just an awesome conversation today.
All right. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.